This is going to be a good week. Some philosophical YA science fiction, some Stephen King short stories, and whatever else I'm in the mood to read. This vlog will cover February 26th up through March 3rd. Hello! Happy Tuesday. I read two short stories today. One of the short stories I liked a lot. The other one, I'm not exactly sure how I felt. The one I liked was Quitters Inc. by Stephen King, part of the Night Shift short story collection. The premise is a man wants to quit smoking, so he goes to this company that has a 98% rate of helping their clients quit smoking, which is astronomical if you're familiar with those numbers. He goes there, he agrees to their treatment, figures out that it's ran by a bunch of ex-mobsters. And how do they get you to quit smoking? By threatening you and the lives of your loved ones. That's motivation for you. Why is that story so interesting and compelling to me? Stephen King was a long-time drug addict for a very long time until he was hit by a van and other life events which caused him to be sober, and now he doesn't even take ibuprofen if he could avoid it. And I imagine that when he was in the middle of his drug addiction, when he was having the hardest time with it, he would have done anything to get past that. But he just didn't have the willpower or the motivation to do it. And I imagine at his darkest times, he would have paid mobsters to threaten his life to make him quit his drugs. The other short story I read was Galatea by Madeline Miller. Madeline Miller is more well known for her Circe and her book Circe and her other book, The Songs of Achilles. And I was pretty excited to try one of her short stories because I haven't read those books. And short stories are a pretty good sneak peek into her author's writing style. And I don't think I liked Galatea. It was very interesting as a thought experiment, a feminist retelling of the myth of Galatea. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. A sculptor falls in love with his creation, a beautiful sculpture of a woman, and he prays to the goddess Aphrodite to make her human, to make her real, and then he falls in love with her and he marries her. This isn't so much a retelling as it starts telling the story where that myth ends off, and it's an abusive relationship, and the language is very jarring and modern, but that's very, common for feminist retellings, because how do you tell a story that's been accepted by, mainstream society in a feminist revolutionary way? You make it jarring, you make it uncomfortable, it makes you think about things you did not consider in the original telling. And in that respect, Madeline Miller was successful, but I'm not exactly sure if I dig it. I like a lot of feminist literature. I like a lot of literature that has feminist leanings or feminist themes, but I don't think I like this one. Thursday, February 29th. I forgot to fill you guys in yesterday because I had a staph infection and I've been a little lightheaded, a little weak, and I was just trying to rest. I was having trouble concentrating on my reads. That being said, I was able to read one of Stephen King's masterpieces, Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. And I thought it was just going to be a prison break story, and it was much, much, much more than that. It was a very politicized read from Stephen King, and I'm relatively new to the Stephen King fandom. I've mostly read new Stephen King. His works are split into old Stephen King before he got sober and new Stephen King. And a lot of his old fans talk about how Stephen King's become a lot more political, and his books just aren't as good as they used to be. And after reading Shawshank Redemption, that is by far the most political work I've read from him. It's a biting critique of the prison industrial complex, and it very clearly calls for prison reform and talks about how prisons aren't designed to rehabilitate people. It's designed to punish people. It talks about, people who work in the prison killing prisoners and hiding their bodies. It talks about how, the black market in prisons, are developed. It talks a lot about prison corruption and how prisons are a very big supply of slave labor. Very politicized read. Would be considered radical when it came out. Would still be considered very left-leaning today. So yeah, I call bullcrap on Stephen King being more politicized now, because very politicized work. Hopefully I'll feel better tomorrow. Saturday, I'm feeling a lot better. The antibiotics have kicked in. The hole in my leg is a lot smaller. I was able to focus on some reading. This morning, it's early afternoon, I read a book from William Dozier. William Dozier's a booktuber I've been following for a few months now, and I like him. He mostly focuses on classical literature. and not generally my cup of tea, but I gave his novella Fumes a try. And at first I was like, I'm not sure how I feel about this. I don't think I like it. It's written in a similar writing style to Cormac McCarthy. For those of you who don't know who Cormac McCarthy is, one of the most renowned, highly acclaimed American novelists of the last 50 years. He died recently. And he had a very minimalist writing style. If he could avoid giving you a detail about something, he would. So it's like the power of absence in writing. And I read one book from Cormac McCarthy, The Road. I didn't like it too much. William Dozier very much tries to emulate, or at least is influenced by Cormac McCarthy's writing style. And Fumes is a story, it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy about how two families are forced into a feud because of things that happened in their past. He uses time jumps very well to kind of paint a picture, and it's just the making of a tragedy. Because tragedies do not just happen. Things in your past drive you towards things. And sometimes tragedies almost seem like they're inevitable. In some ways, they kind of take away your agency as an individual. And this story was very thought-provoking. I think there's only 40 pages and only maybe 8 or 9 different scenes it goes through, but it still paints a very complete picture. The characters, though not described vividly, by the way they act in certain occurrences, I could fill in the blanks. So in using the power of absence, I think Dozier really did pull that off. It's not my cup of tea. I'm not the target audience for this type of writing style, but I can respect it and appreciate it, and I definitely do. Sunday, last day of this week's reading vlog, and I had a very productive day. I started and completed a novella, did it in about 3.5 hours, Spear. This novella was interesting because I had a lot of the tropes I really like. It's a retelling of some Welsh folklore. I can't tell you which fairy tale or folklore story it is because that would be a spoiler. And it had one of my favorite tropes, the Mulan trope. Woman goes undercover as man and fights people. And the author really pulled this off really well. Had a very flowery, old school type writing style. They put diverse characters in this in this medieval setting in a way that wasn't jarring and also kind of realistic. The author also had, at the end of the story, an author's note and a works cited that was several pages long, talking about the history and roots of the names, because I couldn't pronounce any of the names of the characters because they're old Welsh names. And she kind of explained how these names evolved into other names. So some nerdy stuff like that. Footnotes are sexy. So this week, only 489 pages. But in those 489 pages, I read 3 novellas, 3 short stories, and 106 pages of Thunderhead. If I didn't get a staph infection and wasn't out for the count for 2 days, I think I would have finished Thunderhead. It would have been a very productive week. That being said, 6 stories done in 1 week. Very happy with that indeed. I also uploaded 5 videos to the channel this week. I'm very happy with those numbers. I think next week will be even better, but I'm very satisfied with this week. I'll be feeling better. I think I'll be reading better. I think I'll be even more productive. March is starting off good. 3 days into March Madness, 3 videos uploaded. I haven't fallen behind. Thank you guys for watching this week's reading vlog, and I'll see you guys next time.